Whatever happened to Thanatos? Back in Season 2, Thanatos was not among the most popular gods until the very end of the season. That's when the Dirty Bubble meta arose. The Dirty Bubble meta was a meta basically invented by the Dirty Bubble, now Mirage, who came up with the idea to build relatively tanky, high cooldown reduction focused builds on gods with high base damage on their abilities instead of the usual, well, more damage oriented burst builds. In this very meta, Thanatos became extremely popular not only due to the high base damage on his abilities, but also his execute, which allowed him to build into less damage but still deal a lot of damage as soon as an enemy went under the execute threshold. It also allowed him to engage with the ultimate and really made up for his otherwise weak late game, where he would not be able to burst enemies anymore and would be relatively squishy. In Season 3, Dirty Bubble was over. The items that allowed the Dirty Bubble to function were nerfed, so really there was not much of a reason to build them. Instead, normal damage builds came back to the top, and Thanatos kinda disappeared with them. The first notable change that changed this for Thanatos in Season 3 was one that was only really obvious way later down the road, and that was Shield of Regrowth. In Season 3, Shield of Regrowth cost 1800 gold, it had 30 physical power, 30 physical protection, 10% cooldown reduction, and after healing yourself from ability, you gained 35% movement speed for 4 seconds. This can only occur once every 10 seconds. So this was introduced very early in the season with the season start. It took a long time for people to notice how well this could work with Thanatos though. In addition to that, in March, Thanatos got a small buff which increased his base protections from 11 to 14 and also increased his base power from 37 to 39. Thanatos remained unnoticed for the most part and wasn't really picked up after. Even after he got his next buff, he still didn't become any more relevant. In June, in patch 3.11, he got a buff to Soul Reap, increasing the scaling from 60% to 70%. The buff that really increased Thanatos' popularity was the one that happened on October 25, patch 3.20. In this patch, Thanatos' abilities got changed in the way that they now cost percentage of the current health instead of the total health that Thanatos has, meaning that if you were on low health, it would be a lot easier to actually use your abilities. At the same time, the silence duration from Soul Reap was changed so it would be 1 second at all ranks instead of scaling from 0.5 to 1.5, giving him a little bit more early game, which he already had a lot of potential in. Now what needs to be understood with Thanatos is that he works a bit differently from other assassins. Most assassins work best when they can 100 to 0 the enemy. They usually single out a target, hit them with a lot of burst, and hope that they kill them in the ability rotation and get out. Thanatos can't really do that. A, it's pretty hard for him to get out because his only escape is in his ultimate, which you usually need to kill an enemy. And B, he only, outside of that, has 2 damaging abilities. His 2 is just a steroid and a relatively weak escape, with the 1 and the 3 being his actual damaging abilities. So if you're not able to burst someone low enough between your 1 and your 3, you don't get them at your execute threshold, then you can't really do your job as Thanatos. You will be singled out much easier than other assassins who have more mobility, and you don't really have the tools necessary to work around that, or rather you didn't have them at that point. That's why a completely new playstyle for Thanatos came up. This basically started with Shield of Regrowth being picked up on him more frequently as a very early, often rushed item because of the really beneficial effect it had for him, and also the fact that he would generally often be built more tanky once again. You would see items like Breastplate of Valor, Shield of Regrowth as mentioned, Spirit Robe and Void Shield on him, Void Shield now also being buffed compared to before. And what it will allow him to do is also go into lanes like solo, where he would be a secondary frontliner to some extent, but also what really made him stand out at this point, an execute monster. While previously you would always see the players that play Thanatos try to single out a squishy with their burst combo, get them low enough and then ult them, now what you would often see would be the Thanatos player trying to execute the tank. As tanks are usually very hard to chunk down later stages of the game, this was one easy way to get rid of them and maybe surpass something like a Capri ultimate as well. And with this new function that basically the SPL players mostly came up with, Thanatos suddenly spiked in popularity in a slightly different function from what he was before. Thanatos saw play all the way down to the Smite World Championship and didn't really stop getting picked up afterwards. With Season 4, there were some drastic changes to Conquest that really allowed early junglers to get more of an edge on the enemy simply because of the fact that early aggression became more important, putting a huge emphasis on being able to clear the first wave early, fight in the first wave, and contest camps afterwards. Thanatos doesn't excel at all of these things, but he did really well in the early game and as such would continue to be picked up, and that's what we see to this day. What has changed for Thanatos at this point is that Shield of Regrowth now has health instead of physical defense, and as such is not quite as beneficial for him anymore as it was before. So we will still see it being picked up quite often, but it lost a little bit of its potential compared to Season 3. However, this is made up for by the fact that there are new items that really allow Thanatos to shine in his previous role as a squishy burster, really being able to 100 to 0 enemies again. A big contributor to this fact is the new Heartseeker, which allows you to get a decent amount of extra damage on a single ability, and likewise the relatively new Hydra's Lament, which allows you to get a lot of extra damage on a basic attack swing after an ability. Both often can be combined in a build, which really helps, not necessarily always core for Thanatos, but with the potential to go into more cooldown reduction as well without overcapping penetration. He has some more benefits there, and really there are a lot more options for a Thanatos just looking to go for heavy burst all the way down to late game, as opposed to the previous more bruiser-oriented Thanatos. As such, we often see Thanatos being first banned at the moment in ranked, or at least being one of the higher prioritized bans. However, if we look at Thanatos' SPL performance, he's actually not doing as well as he was expected to be by many. He actually struggles and has a less than glorious showing in quite a few of the games, simply due to the fact that people have adapted to playing against a Thanatos again, mainly meaning they don't play too aggressive early and they pick gods that work decently against him, for example Susano. As such, it's likely that Thanatos won't even be receiving too many nerfs and might not be considered as strong by Hi-Rez as many think he is, simply due to the fact that on a higher level of play he doesn't really show up in the same form as he does in an average ranked game. It's still not entirely unlikely that he will be nerfed to at least some extent to bring him more in line with his fellow assassins again. We will see about that in the near future. With that, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you found this insightful and interesting, feel free to leave a subscription down below, check out another video, or leave a like. Some of the info in this video was, at least to some extent, inspired by a video from Wolfie. The link is right here and also down in the description. Feel free to check it out. If you enjoy his content, please subscribe to him, leave a like and all that stuff there as well. Sorry about not making a video yesterday. I was feeling really sick and figured I should take the day off. I will be back for the patch notes tomorrow though. Duke Sloth, out.